doing a little talk radio yesterday with the fabulous Courtney Stewart.
I really liked her.
She's fantastic.
I have not gotten to know her until recently, but yeah, she's on my list.
She's fantastic. She's very knowledgeable. A former Hook journalist. That's where she cut her teeth, as they say. A journalist for the Hook, then went to the newsroom at CHV Monticello Media, the CRG competitor, and then did some time at CBS 19, and now Charlottesville Right Now on 1070. You are great, Courtney. I really truly mean that. I think you know. I think the world of your journalism. A lot we're going to cover today. Today is the 2-year anniversary of the COVID pandemic.
Isn't that hard to believe?
That's bananas.
Like it's been just yesterday and forever, all
Right?
at the same time?
It's like the longest, shortest thing ever.
Yeah.
2 years flew by, but at the same time, it was gruelingly slow.
It's like raising children.
It's like it's like being a dad.
Yeah.
You have 2 kids, right?
I do.
Yeah, it's like being a dad. So he knows firsthand. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching the program. Nicholas Erpy, hello. If you want to offer some questions or some commentary, put it in the feed, and you often will dictate the pace and tempo of the show. Quinn Beckham filling in for Keith, who's working on his tan in the Caribbean as we speak. We're going to have fun here in a matter of moments. J-Dubs, live on all social platforms. My friend, are you ready to rock and roll? We're in your hands, J-Dubs. Good Friday morning, guys. It's Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk. We are live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seaville Network. Real Talk presented by Keller Williams Realty and Yes Realty Partners. Very excited for the Friday edition as our friend, our brother from another mother, Quentin Beckham, sits in the lead host chair. Keith Smith, our regular, is working on his suntan in the Caribbean as we speak. That means we get QB for a Friday morning. Christopher Eagle, good morning. Today's show, I think, is going to be fantastic. We're going to talk a number of topics today, including the 2-year anniversary of the COVID pandemic. That's today.
That's amazing.
Longest, shortest, worst, hardest thing ever, this 2-year pandemic. It's flown by, but it's been gruelingly slow. That topic we'll lead with. We'll talk about rates, the vulnerable nature of the economy, and so much more. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Let's go to the two-shot and let's welcome QB. QB, ¿qué pasa, chico?
Good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm well. What's a good word?
I have coffee. I have a haircut.
Same.
It's Friday.
Yeah, it's nice outside.
It is, yes, and we're getting smacked around tomorrow with weather.
Yeah, crazy. True? The snow potential tomorrow, 3 to 5 inches, I think they're calling for. I don't know if your allergies have started. Mine have started already.
Yeah, there's tree pollen out there just waiting to assault you.
Are you a pollen allergy guy?
I never was till I came here.
And now?
Where I grew up, no allergies at all, and now I just keep Claritin like in all the drawers of every place I inhabit.
That is literally what I do. I go a 3 to 4 month period of popping a Claritin pretty much every day.
Yeah, it's terrible.
My friend, I'll tell you what, the show is yours. How do you feel about the 2-year anniversary of this pandemic?
I'm happy that it feels like it's more in the rearview mirror.
Amen.
You know, the world really does seem to be returning to a little more normal, whatever our new normal is. And it's been nice to see some of our local businesses full. It's been nice to have to really plan to get a table at a restaurant as opposed to them being half empty all the time. And I know that's still patchy out there. Some places are really doing well and others are still having a hard time. And but it's good to see that the trend is up. And I think even our sales tax revenue shows that in the city and in the county. Seeing some good improvements on that. Neil Williamson was sharing some data with that earlier in one of his posts.
Neil Williamson, if you're watching the program, join us. My friend Johnny Ornella says, good morning to Quentin Beckham. I respond by saying, good morning, J.O., the owner of El Mariachi and Guadalajara JPA. Sales tax revenue is up. Travel, transient occupancy tax is up. You go to restaurants, which you and I do routinely, and we see them filled with happy, paying patrons. Put in perspective, and Neil is watching, put in perspective the pulse of Main Street that you are hearing on the nature of the local economy.
Again, just very patchy. We're seeing a lot of things pick up in what I tend to think of areas that locals hang out, and then other parts that just still haven't quite reached that threshold yet, where I think maybe businesses that suffered earlier on and are still in reset mode. We're going to have to wait and see how they reset and pick up, because right now they're still behind locked doors, reconfiguring and restaffing.
Reconfiguring and restaffing is a good description. Neil shares the link from the Free Enterprise Forum about the retail recovery rolling on. That link is in the comment section of my Facebook page. This has come in on Twitter. Why are so many businesses listed if the recovery is strong? Please cover that topic.
Well, it is still patchy, and remember that when you're thinking of business finance, it's sometimes a longer term equation, and so some of them just held out as long as they could. And this amount of recovery, although the pandemic might feel like it was just yesterday when they declared, was 2 years ago, and so they have succumbed to the 2-year sort of set of trials that they've had to go through. And although labor shortages are still resolving in the service industry, there's still quite a lot of labor shortages. So you have to have funds to continue, you have to have a current lease, you have to have staff, and for some owners that didn't have to do it, you have to have willpower. And so if it was not high on their list or something that was necessary for their personal lives, they might have just chosen to back out and leave that opportunity for somebody else.
Stephanie Wells Rhodes watching on LinkedIn. Stephanie, we appreciate your support, many years of that. And if you want to jump in with any questions or perspective, please do. See a number of our friends watching on LinkedIn. So let's talk about let's go short term and the rest of the year. It is now March 11th, Friday in 2022, the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. What do we see is going to happen between now and, say, summertime? Normally, traditionally, there's a momentum and a increase in activity and a spike of positivity right before vacation time, a lull generally in the summer as we see a lot of Charlottesvillians leave, and then fall gangbusters again. Is that something we could expect this year?
Well, if we're thinking of short-term changes, the first biggest short-term change that will affect retail businesses, particularly service industry ones, is the time changes this weekend. So it's no longer dark when you're leaving the office. And so your ability and your opportunity to go do more things just increases, because we're all kind of solar powered. And if the sun sets too early, what are the odds? So we're moving into that time. We still have new professors coming in. We've got residents coming in, contracts with JAG School, NJIC, DIA. So all of those things are going to happen in spring. And so I think you'll see some of those really impact our local economy. But although the pandemic is leaving, we have new issues before us. And they're a little more global in nature, but they have very real local impacts. We were talking about that a week ago, Monday or Tuesday. And I think it's hard to predict and balance all of those out, although we do have some good history on that to kind of give us an idea of what we should watch for.
The time change certainly bodes well for restaurants from happy hour and people patronizing the businesses outside. That excites all of us. Students coming back from spring break starting on Monday, that excites all of us. I think we are in a time of a lot of potential. Clearly the gas is on everybody's mind. Kevin Yancey, hello, the king of Waynesboro. I mean, I think you just got so many factors colliding at once that are creating this sense of uncertainty. And that uncertainty, as folks, certainly as Americans, I mean, just human nature, makes us a little, how's this going to play out? Hesitant, if you may.
I think so, and I think there's a lot of things that we tend to think of as local. So you'll hear us say over and over that all real estate is local, but all of the real estate market is not. So all real estate might be local, but what determines interest rates is not, and how people move through the country is not local. And so yes, we have some, let's call it local texture to how things operate, but it's still larger national and global events that impact us that we have to sort of be responsive to and ready to deal with.
I was playing some squash last night, and a conversation came up that had me thinking about you.
That makes me anxious.
It's a real estate topic. One of the guys mentioned that his assessments had gone up so high that there's no way that he'd be able to sell his current house for what it's assessed at today. And traditionally, the assessments generally trail market value. They're lower than what you can sell your home for. Where I'm now hearing from a handful of people, including viewers of the show, that assessments are higher than what they actually believe they can sell their home for. What do you make of that?
So let's think about how that happens, though. When you sell a home, your assessment becomes either the last assessment or the sale price, whichever one of the two is higher. So we've cycled through a lot of resales in the last 2 years with big rises in prices, so that has become the new assessment. And so we have changed the math based on how many homes not just came on the market, but sold. Because remember, it's not just that we had a lot of inventory come onto the market, it's that we sold 99.5% of it for 2 years running, a number that is much higher than we're used to. And so we have taken assessments that are traditionally a rear view mirror sort of thing and brought them into the passenger seat. And that's going to make those assessments more closely align with the market value. The downside of that is you're going to pay, whole neighborhoods are going to pay higher taxes, because if 5 out of 10 houses on a block sell, it's going to affect the new assessment for the 5 that didn't. And the upside of that is that your market value is always your market value, and the assessment is its own thing that lives over here.
Kevin Yancey, watching the program, we've dubbed him the King of Waynesboro. He says right now we're in a carbon copy of 2007, 2009. 2007, 2009 was the real estate recession, depression. And he's alluding, and I asked him to offer more perspective here. Ray Cadell, we'll get to that comment here in a matter of moments. I asked Kevin for more, and King of Waynesboro, if you could put it in the feed, more insight into what you mean that right now we're in a carbon copy of 07, 09. What do you think he's alluding to here, QB?
If you're alluding to the market bubble that caused the crash in 09, I really don't think that's what we're facing.
I feel the same as you. Explain why.
We've talked about that a whole lot, and I think part of it is
more equity.
It's more equity, and remember that the bubble means this high rise with an absence of anything in the middle. And that absence in 09 was not just the value of the homes, it was also occupants to pay for them. And so inventory exceeded the supply of homeowners and renters and was stacked one on the other. And there was a lot of speculation in the securities market based on real estate, and all of those things sort of wrapped together to create that crash. What we've got right now are people in homes facing different economic things, but they're in the home, they have a vested interest in staying there, they're paying, they're purchasing, and in many cases, renters that are seeking to buy that next one. So in 7, 8, 9, when you could go someplace with a boom, like Texas or California had big housing booms of the era, Florida as well, you could travel through whole subdivisions of 100 homes where there were only a dozen occupants, and that's not the case today.
Ray Cadell and Associates, fantastic horn player, fantastic realtor. This is not at all like the bubble. Way more cash buyers, out-of-town buyers, much larger down payments. He alludes to the equity we have in our houses. And I also want to emphasize the regulatory nature of financing and lending that's in place now that was not in place 13 years ago. More difficult to get to loan now than it was 13 years ago. We're certainly seeing a lot less of those 3 and 5 year ARMs that got a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah, I don't know that I trust regulators to really protect that sort of thing. I do think just the basic foundational facts of our market and where we sit mean that it's not a real estate bubble. I don't think that means everything's rosy, because there's a lot more going on than just the real estate market. But in terms of what set us up to have a bubble in real estate, we're not seeing the same sorts of things happening.
Kevin's got his response. He says, in 07 to 2009, I personally heard buyers and selling agents tell appraisers that they needed this house to appraise for XYZ to make this deal work. I will emphasize this. I don't think legally that is possible or allowed. This man certainly knows more about that. Daniel McDougall, DMAC, we love when you watch the programs, got some comments here that we're going to get to in a matter of moments. Daniel Pettit, Mustache Dan Pettit, we love you, DP, the king of the tennis courts, watching the program right now, and we'll get to his comments. So do you want to touch on any of that before I get to the comments?
Keep going.
Okay, so let's go to Ray Cadell. He said, I need to see the data on the assessments being higher than what a buyer or a seller can sell their house for, a seller. Anecdotally, and in my personal business, I have seen sales prices exceed assessments, sometimes by a lot. And he also says this is not at all like the bubble. There are way more cash buyers and out-of-town buyers, much larger down payments. Yancey responds, King of Waynesboro, to Ray Cadell and us. And he says 0709 has some similarities to now because of homes appraising for price points that aren't necessarily indicative of what true market value is for those houses. Dan Pettit responds to both of them by saying maybe the person who says they would not be able to sell their home at assessment value has not done any renovations or upgrades to add more dollars to their house.
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about a specific home and line all that stuff out. And I think, we're just coming out of the pandemic, so that's going to be my metaphor. One of the hard things about getting a doctor's appointment in the pandemic was they didn't want you to show up in person if you had COVID, and yet every symptom of COVID was every symptom of anything else you could have. So, the symptoms were fevers and sneezing and congestion and shortness of breath, which checks the list of 800 other infectious diseases or health issues. And so I think in the market right now, we are seeing so many symptoms of things that feel reminiscent that it's hard to separate out the root cause.
Ooh, that was good.
And so although it may feel like to individual sellers or buyers, this might feel like, because of the speed of the market, the pace and the acceleration of the appraised values, it might feel like 08, 09, but this is being driven by very, very different factors. So 08, 09, what drove a lot of this was speculation. People believed that the price of a house, the value of a house, would always go up, and so they would leverage the house they owned to buy the next one, and they believed there would always be renters to make those payments, and that they would then keep their low interest rate to convert out of that ARM. There was a particular speculation in the market that ran all the way from securities down to individual homeowners. And if you go back and you read about that, there was a lot of individuals that were realtors and non-realtors that just bought a house, prices went up, they loaned out their equity and they bought the next house. The price went up on that one, they pulled out the equity and they bought the next one. And the securities market did the same sort of thing. So I think very, very different circumstances. We do have some folks that are buying investment properties to rent. It's not the same kind of stacking that it was before, and the vast majority of every house we've sold is a primary residence or a second residence. It's not a commodity.
Dude, nice take. Daniel McDougall, your comments coming up next. Jump in the feed, guys. This from Twitter. From Spencer, please ask QB. I love when people call you QB. Please ask QB what if this market is reminiscent of any other market he's ever seen. That's a good question.
I can answer a side question. You know, are the economic circumstances that we're facing reminiscent of something else? And the answer to that is yes. So if you're on the feed, can you think back to the last time a non-homegrown global event caused an energy crisis and a recession? Is there anybody on the feed that's old enough? And I say that as an accomplishment. You've achieved old age and wisdom and the ability to give sage advice. We have been in the situation we're in now before as a country. And can you think back to when that was?
Okay, so when is the last time an international event, and name the last time in the comment section. Put it in right now. When is the last time an international event has impacted gasoline prices in this manner? That's the question, right?
Correct.
Put it in the feed. Roger West watching the program right now. Roger, we love when you comment on the show. Mortgage banker, finance guy, he's got comments. First, let's get to Daniel McDougall, another mortgage guy jumping in the mix. Dodd-Frank changed the game. While prices may fall, and indeed some folks may find themselves upside down, all buyers have been qualified the traditional way. No exotic loan products. Losing job income will always be a factor, but that goes into all types of market. He alludes to regulatory nature, tighter regulatory with financing of houses.
And I think it's great to have fences around this. I don't think the fences, I think even without the fences, we're just not in a situation where we're going to face the same sort of speculation. The base circumstances that brought us here are the same, even though the value increase and that price appreciation feels really stark and is making us feel like, ooh, I remember this feeling. I remember this sensation. It felt like this. I often have moments of trepidation when I look at what's going on in the world, and it reminds me of being married. That doesn't mean that they're the same thing. So
this lives on the internet forever, Clinton.
And you know, I'm seeing a variety of other comments about price improvements and property taxes and that sort of stuff. And I think for individual houses, I want to go back to what you say all the time on the show. If you're an individual family member, what we're saying globally only matters about this much to the decision you're making individually, and your individual decision should be guided by a trusted counselor who knows all the ins and outs and can look at your specific house and give you the best advice.
So, Donna Patton throwing you zingers over here on Facebook.
Uh-oh, what's she saying?
And she says, sure you do, about the marriage comment over there. Donna Patton, we love you, DP.
And any trepidation in the marriage thing was my doing, not anybody else's fault. Let me just say that.
Yeah. It was a joke. It was a joke.
It was totally a joke.
Yeah.
But just in case. So Neil Williamson tagged it. So way back in the 70s, 72, 73, there had been a war going on between Arab nations and Israel, and we started providing weapons to Israel and support, and OPEC got angry for us getting in the middle of what they felt like was their area's business, and they embargoed oil, and gas prices went through the roof, and we had to have all sorts of conservation. And if you're wise and sage enough, I'm trying to not say old enough to remember, you had to get in line. There were odd days and even days that you could get gas based on the first number in your license plate, and it was a really, really interesting situation. And that was when we saw gas prices go up from 35, 45 cents a gallon to over $1. And I can remember everybody in my family describing how when gas prices went over $1, the world and civilization was going to collapse.
Ray Cadell says, I was trying to travel with my band doing one-nighters in that odd gas crisis days. That's when cars were in lines for miles to get gas.
I can remember people...
Man, dude, we have smart viewers. Jason Howard, I wasn't alive then, but in 1973, OPEC declared an embargo on Western nations, including the U.S., retaliating for support of Israel.
Exactly.
Dude, smart viewer. We can't get one past them.
Exactly right. And so what followed on that was the single largest rise in inflation that we've experienced as a nation. And yes, there was a recession in there, but it was really the inflation that made the difference, where we saw inflation hit at its peak somewhere around 20%. So,
and what followed with rates?
And what followed with mortgage rates, well, this went on through, was it Nixon that was president? Who was before Jimmy Carter?
Judah may know that. Judah's a walking history book. Who was the president before Jimmy Carter?
For whoever it was. The president prior to that really worked hard, and the nation worked hard, and we negotiated peace, and the embargo was lifted, but inflation was still there because things don't just fix overnight. And Jimmy Carter became president, and he put in as the Fed chair a gentleman by the name, is it Paul Volcker? Somebody that's faster and smarter than me.
As chair of the Fed.
As chair of the Fed. And he, that chairman, lasted into the Reagan years, and he was tasked specifically with curing inflation. And the way he did it was by cranking up rates.
Daniel McDougall confirms it was Ford. I believe that's what you
Daniel.
said, J-Dubs. The Walking History book, Judah Wickhauer, director. Any concerns we're going to see rates like that now?
So here's our new conundrum. So here's things we can expect based on history, if history plays out the same. It makes total sense that as energy prices go up, inflation will continue. And we did a poll, sort of an impromptu poll, I think the last time you and I did this, and the vast majority of folks on the feed expected inflation. We talked about inflation expectation and how that affects actual inflation. And it's reasonable when you think of how much petroleum products live in our entire lives. They're used in all of the healthcare.
In everything.
They're in everything. Food miles, fertilizer, phosphor, all of those sorts of things. And so it makes reasonable sense that as we continue to do what we think is right, we're going to continue to see inflation. In the past, how I'm going to have a little coffee here for a second.
Have some coffee right there. And Donna wants to clarify something. It was about the age comment, not the marriage comment.
Oh, no.
So she wants to comment that.
Either way.
So keep going, dude. You're on point right now.
So Volcker, being tasked with fixing that, basically just kept cranking up the prime rate until it had cooled the economy so much.
We went into a recession.
We had a recession, and inflation went away. And we have been riding that wave ever since. For 40 years, what he did in sort of pushing the pause button to let inflation reset has pretty much given us the 1 to 3% inflation we would expect, along with rising economy. So do we expect these mortgage rates to go up? I really hope not. Basically because I'm concerned of how they affect everyday people. Much in the way I don't want real estate taxes to go up because I'm concerned that what might feel small to a smaller percentage of people will feel big to a larger percentage of people.
Absolutely.
And will increase the income and wealth inequality that we already have here locally and across our nation. So I don't want that sort of thing to happen. And I think we have control over that, and we don't have control over inflation.
Explain how rates are more important than price. Dude, you got four mortgage guys on the show right now that I can count. Scott Mortgage Morris of Ross Mortgage. Hello and welcome to the show. Explain how rates are more important than price.
So understanding I'm the B string at explaining this, and these guys over here probably have a much better explanation.
Yeah, you got some experts listening to about what you're about to say here.
So when I say it wrong, just help me out in the feed and don't, understand that I'm already, passing the crown. Which reminds me, he names all sorts of people royalty, and I'm not even like...
I've given you the nickname QB.
Yeah, well, so...
You want me to call you the quarterback? The quarterback is on the show right now.
Rates are way more important in your monthly cost of living and your cost of housing, or things that might influence a CPI, than is the price. So a $400,000 house at 4%, let's say, and I'm making numbers up, so if somebody wants to do the math and tell me, that's fine, but I'm making them up. That price point, 400 grand, 4%, your payment, $1,600 a month. A 350 grand house at 7.5%, your payment's gonna be $1,750. And so monthly, in cost of living for people, month to month, paycheck to paycheck, those rates make a much bigger difference over the long term than does the actual price point. And in many ways, they also make a difference to how you build wealth, how you build equity, because you're paying more to interest in the initial part of the mortgage than if you have a lower interest rate. And so I hope that they don't start to raise interest rates dramatically, because as all the lenders know, that debt to income ratio on the back end really matters. And that $100 difference, which is now going to be $150 difference because of the increase in the assessments and how those taxes are calculated, can push even more people out of the envelope of home ownership.
I thought you did really well there. DMAC, Daniel McDougall, how do you do? Roger West, Scott Morris, how do you do? Put the comments in the comment section here. We'll relay them live on air. The feed's on fire right now. Quentin Beckham's on fire right now. CPI, the number released yesterday, higher than expected. Consumer Price Index, 7.9%. I was having this conversation last night as well. That 7.9% is not even indicative of true CPI, because it's a number in the rears and does not factor in today's gas struggle at the pump.
And one of the CPIs even excludes energy on purpose because it's considered too volatile.
So what'd you make of the 7.9?
I think we can all hate inflation and increases in the consumer price index. And at the same time, we have to accept that these are probably unavoidable consequences of the global reality that we live in right now. There is too much volatility, and there are too many global commodities that are being impacted by Russia and Ukraine. And we're going to feel that no matter what we do. We have ways to make it easier, but in the end, it mostly incurs a higher cost in daily living.
Here's a good one from Twitter. Jerry, bring up the interview you had with the bearded man the other day in his Fluvanna units.
The bearded man. The bearded man.
The bearded man.
I feel like I should drop my voice.
Went on Twitter. No, it was Greg Slater. It was Greg Slater, the bearded man. Greg Slater has got, what was the number 22? Either 22, 23, or 24 townhomes coming on the market at one time outside of Fluvanna, outside of Lake Monticello and Fluvanna.
Okay.
And he talked about it on the show.
And I did not see the show, so forgive me.
Sure, no
Sorry,
problem.
Greg, I tried to watch.
No problem. He talked about it, these 22, 23, 24 townhomes on the market. And they were done by a builder. And the builder did it during the housing recession. So instead of trying to sell the units, he pivoted the model and said, I'm going to rent them. Well, now the builder sees the opportunity of no inventory being on the market and is choosing to sell them. And these 22, 23, 24 units, it's one of those numbers, the bearded man, Greg Slater, who we love, mentioned them on the show. And when he mentioned them on the show, Quentin, there was 5 agents from 5 different firms all chopping at the bit in the feed of the show, asking him questions when they could see it and the fact that they had buyers for these individual units. So on Twitter, they're saying, bring this up with Quentin and get his take on that circumstance that happened on Real Talk.
Why? Why does that happen?
We know it's an indication of tight inventory.
Yeah, the demand is still super high, and people are still needing places to live. And we've been behind in creating that inventory and meeting that demand for a decade. And it just got really accelerated over the pandemic as so many people moved, reassessed their living situation, and continued to go. And it continues to be a problem economically, just because you have a huge percentage of houses still owned by baby boomers over the last 5 to 6 years that traditionally would have been re-entering and recycling through the market as they downsized, as they moved to different living circumstances that were more conducive to them. And now what you're seeing is those are becoming generational homes, or they're afraid to sell them because they don't know where to go, and it's too much uncertainty.
This is an interesting question. Why is $400,000 the price point in the example that Quentin gave? Why not lower? Anything in the 200 to 250 range? Kevin Yancey on that one.
Yes, and I was actually sitting here typing a response to him.
Type that response. Here's what I've been doing, is I've been reading the response that I'm typing and then doing both at the same time.
I think we default to 400 or somewhere, 350 to 450, because in many of the markets we're seeing that as the median price point. And so half the homes are more and half the homes are less. And so we just sort of pull that number out of error because that's the median that we see a lot of time. And I think too, we're seeing so few homes that are less than 300,000. It's starting to fall out of our generic conversation.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Very, very few homes that are less than 300,000, and a ever shrinking population that can even afford those 300,000.
That's well said. What's today? Terry Warren, welcome to the program. We're live on 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, LinkedIn, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then Instagram as well. What do you think the end of this year, Charlottesville City, Albemarle County, those two jurisdictions, the price point is going to be for first-time homebuyers?
Higher than it is today, but by a smaller percentage than it was in the 2 preceding years.
You're basically saying values will slow,
but they
continue
won't
to
stop.
increase.
But they won't stop.
They won't stop. They'll continue to increase, but we're not going to see double-digit appreciation.
No, I would be surprised if we did, for the simple fact that we just don't have enough volume of houses to create that change, because every house that sells next week, part of their price is dependent on what sold 4 weeks ago. And when we were cycling so quickly and we didn't have any lull, we had no summer lull, we had no winter lull, that changed that equation, and just we got 4 years worth of price appreciation in 2.
Around the corner from me, a home traded in February for $500. The home needed work, specifically a new roof, significant landscaping issues, and some TLC. It went on the market, I don't know, a week and a half ago,
Yeah.
and it traded for over $700. We're talking a $200,000 price difference, although the buyer or the seller put a new roof on there, okay, did some significant landscaping work, and did some upgrades around the house, but certainly not 200 plus worth of improvements.
And does this surprise you greatly?
It doesn't surprise me. It gives me pause.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 months, we're talking about a $200K price point difference. I mean, generally a buyer would look at what the home traded for last and said, this home traded for $5 billion in February, and now he's asking 7+ in end of March, mid-March, not even 2 months, and scratch their head. Albeit today's buyers are, I don't want to use, do we use the word desperate? Today's buyers are so pinched that it's becoming survival Darwinism out there for buyers. I mean, you look at open houses. Who posted this? Scotty Morris may have posted this on his Facebook page. We love you, Scotty Morris. You look at some open houses, and these agents have a caravan, a parade of cars. Who made the comment? It might have been Greg made the comment. He did an open house for 2 hours. 70 different prospective buyers came in 2 hours.
Yeah.
He said the front door never closed.
Yeah. I tend to think of last year and the year before as sort of real estate, the purge edition, where it was a frenzied, over-the-top, insane market. And we're entering a different version of that now. This is more like, Halloween. So it's a little less frenetic. It's not quite so huge because there's not enough inventory for it to be huge. But the ratio of sellers to buyers is so out of whack that we're in a really unhealthy market, and you're going to see people pay market price for homes that need repairs. You're going to see people give up perks and cash in order to buy a home that you wouldn't have seen 3 years ago, and that's very simply the state that we're in right now. And I am regularly amazed, although I shouldn't be, as I see some of these things continue. And
what amazes specifically how? Are you talking complimentary seller possession? Are you talking about no closing costs being offered?
Oh, Jason.
Your boy Jason.
Jason's coining phrases now.
That was a great phrase.
Yeah, we're gonna have a new vernacular.
How would you describe it differently? Do you like that phrase he's coined? That's Jason Kirby, right?
That's Jason Kirby.
Smart dude.
Excellent agent. If you're looking to buy or sell,
I'll tag him right now to get him in the mix.
Him and Katie both are really exceptional agents, and they're not alone in that regard. We have quite a few of them. I suppose I'm just amazed because in my world, I want housing to be accessible to everybody.
We all do.
And although I know we like to talk about the people that came in to see the $500,000 house and wrote a check for $700 and won the bid because it's sort of like applauding the lottery winner or like you're watching Wheel of Fortune. That has some entertainment value to it. What I'm mostly concerned about is as we move through this period of inflation, increased real estate assessments, what is that doing to middle to lower income families? And how's that affecting not just housing affordability, but affordable housing? And in the end,
It's crushing it.
it's crushing it.
Yeah.
In the end, a strong economy, whether it's a local economy or a more global economy, is supported by a strong middle class.
Yeah. Amen.
Because no matter
Dude, amen. The middle class is key.
and the more we
Back
make
up.
that, the more we make it impossible to be middle class, for which there's no real good definition right now. You know, most people think not having to live paycheck to paycheck is middle class. Having some disposable income is middle class. And we're seeing that pinched. When we were talking last time, we had people on the feed talking about how much less they go out to dinner. And then let's think of like what I would consider the virtuous cycle of economic effects. If we don't have a pinched middle class, non-pinched middle class get to go out more, they get to spend more. Those become taxes that are not affected to housing, that feed the coffers, which allow the city to do good things, which promote business and home ownership, and make the process of a robust economy better. A robust economy means more affordable housing, and I'm not using capital A. It impacts housing affordability, and the more we impact housing affordability, the easier it would be to start talking about affordable housing.
Dude, poignant perspective.
You know, where I worry about the house that you were just talking about that sold for $700K.
In less than 2 months after a
less than 2 months.
$500K purchase. Now, I have to emphasize, they put on a new roof, but a new roof is not $200,000 worth of price difference. That new roof probably in the vicinity of 15 to 20K. They also did significant landscaping, and they also did some TLC improvements inside. In totality, and I'm not in the remodeling space, in totality, I would imagine it was $50K or under worth of work, in particular because of the time frame of the initial purchase and then the second purchase. You're not talking a huge window. And when you don't have a huge window like that, you can't do massive remodeling when the remodelers are so pinched right now with their own calendars and supply chains.
I hear you. I still think the thing that gets to me about $700K price is, as realtors, you have to think of us as the lifeguards of real estate. You know, it is my job as you move through the pool of housing to be sure that you don't drown, and that it's a fun time, and, you know, keep the peace between all of the homeowning, partying, pool people. Affordable housing is how do we take care of the small children in the deep end? And so if the median price is where Kevin would be happier, if the median house price was $225,000, that's only 2 feet of water, and damn near anybody can reach down and help that person up. When the median price is $450 and rising to $500, $600, you're talking 9 feet of water. Now you need a real lifeguard. And I don't want to see us reach the point to where it's 13 to 50 feet of water where you actually need scuba gear.
I mean, I love the metaphor. Vanessa Parkhill, hello.
And so every time we can increase housing supply, even if it's not something that folks in need of affordable housing can purchase, it lowers that water. It makes the ability to help people better because you're not having to overcome such a depth of price or in such a depth of water. And so I really think it's important as we talk to you how municipalities work. All of zoning and density is controlled at the local level with very rare exceptions. And the ability to build fast and to build dense will affect that level of water, even if those first houses that come out are 600 grand price points. And I know that's horrible and really hard to hear if you have been searching and searching and searching and you haven't gotten a house and you max out at 350. I know you don't want to hear that, and I have utmost empathy, but getting down to where we can have 350 houses means we have to stop making $500,000 houses being bid on by $750,000 purchasers because that's the only thing they can buy.
Dude, so true. I mean, so true. If we're not careful, the $700,000 price point is going to be the price point of that trade-up buyer. The trade-up buyer that got something for the 3-4 and then is looking for something in the 5-6, but reality it's 7 or 8. And that is a region that is pretty much gentrified into homogenous and wealthy. DMAC, Daniel McDougall, we'll get to your comments. King of Waynesboro, Kevin Yancey makes the comment, which we, I think, both agree with. When any locality or jurisdiction depends dramatically on real estate taxes to cover their budgets, artificially inflated homes will become a reality. It's a no-win scenario. And then he says, show me any home in Seville or Albemarle under 300K. Kevin Yancey, it's going to be really hard to find. We are straight shooters here on the show. And finding a home in Charlottesville City or in Albemarle County under 300,000, that's a single-family detached home, is going to be damn near impossible. You can find condos, you can find townhomes, but an under 300K single-family detached home under 300,000 is damn near impossible. And if it exists, you're going to be dumping some money into it to get it up to speed from a TLC standpoint, a remodeling standpoint.
And I think Dan also brings up a good point in the feeds. He's talking about people on fixed incomes.
Yeah. Dan Pettit.
We do still have a percentage of residents in and close to the city that are living in paid off family generational homes. And they are frequently on fixed incomes because they're retirees. There is a segment that really have a limited income. And so these changes in assessments, these changes in real estate taxes, and this inflation can have an extreme effect on them. And we tend to forget that because when we're talking about how houses are selling, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the assessment change that is, let's say, $400 a year for most people, tack in inflation that's another $400 a year, it's hard to remember how important $800 a year is to what is our lower income segment and our fixed income segment.
Well, you did a good job of putting it in perspective on, was it Monday's show? $800 a year could be someone's paycheck.
Half a paycheck. But other things it could be is two prescription copays a month.
Yeah.
It's like $60 a month, let's say.
Or the grocery bill for a month and a half.
Grocery
for a
bill
family
for a month
of 4.
It can be half a tank of gas from where you live in Luray to try and get to your job at UVA.
Right. And that's how we should look at $800 a month, guys, or $800.
And so,
it's in tangible terms.
So I think we have to look at it in tangible terms. And I think part of why we have to look at it in tangible terms is we have to talk about who it affects the most. And it most affects the people that are at the greatest risk of being pushed further out from where they live and where the jobs are.
The folks on the financial margin.
The folks on the financial margins.
Daniel McDougall, DMAC, you're making the program better. Interesting article from Redfin survey. Did you see his comment? I'll read it to you here.
Yeah.
I'm curious of your take. Interesting article from Redfin. So Redfin's legit, right?
Polls are legit, yes. There's a variety of sources. It depends on how you structure them.
How do you characterize Redfin?
They're one of several large aggregators. And so, like a lot of places, they aggregate information and they have realtors that participate in that.
He says this, interesting article from Redfin survey. 77% of customers think we're in a housing bubble. 44% of realtors think that there is a bubble in their market.
Understanding that there might be some local markets there where there is a local bubble, that could be true. I don't know all of the local markets above. I think a lot of consumers might think there's a bubble because, again, it feels the same fever as COVID, even though it's not. And everything I read and see from smarter people than me and economists across the nation and our state say that's not the case.
Yeah, I want to. I mean, the guy's the expert here. This guy's got. How many people were on your team in the family tree? 100 and how many?
We got about 145 to 140-ish folks that work
140-ish
through the
folks.
companies with us.
That work through his brands and businesses.
Yeah.
And you emphasized last time you got partners.
And I have partners.
Yeah, through his brands and businesses, 140 some people. Dude has a lot of people who count on him. A lot of people who count on him.
And a lot of people that really their income is because of how hard they work. You know, we support, we promote, and we try to smooth the rails, but they're still in charge of the train.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the business.
It's the nature of the business.
Yeah. So are your 140 some mentioning this at all?
I think
Do you have these conversations?
we have a lot of these conversations because it's so much more work now to work somebody through the real estate transaction. You know, if I'm going back to the pool scenario, it's a lot easier to manage a pool with 30 people in it than it is one with 175, all competing for a spot to swim. And so it's a lot more work to manage people through the process. I think there's been a lot of emotional empathy for their buyers, where their buyer might be making their fourth home purchase offer and still losing, even though they are really maxing out everything they can possibly do. And then some other concern about the intrinsic costs of being a realtor. You know, gas affects the business expense of being a real estate agent. All of these things have a play out that spans our economy. And as with most economic impacts, the people at the top are a lot more insulated than the people at the bottom.
This on Spotify. Streaming on Spotify. Leaving comments. I love it. Does the guest think that less realtors will stay in the field with gasoline being so high and not enough houses to sell? The guess is QB.
I think if you look
We
at
call him the quarterback.
I think if you look at the number of listings and the number of licensees, I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that there has to be something balance out there.
You don't want to go anymore? Leave it at that?
That's about all. I mean, if we look at other things, if we look at all other kinds of professional services, there is a direct relationship between volume and input into the field. And so if we are like any other professional service that is impacted that way, then yeah, I mean, you might see a reduction in licensees because there's just fewer widgets to sell.
Yeah, they need rooftops to earn a living. And if there are no rooftops to sell, then there's no living to be made, despite the barrier of entry being low and the monthly carrying costs of staying in the business being low.
And I would also point out that the number of licensees is not directly related to the number of licensed agents who are selling.
What does that mean?
That means that you have principal brokers who don't sell. You have people that have a license for another reason, like perhaps they're a home inspector or they have some other sort of home service business. You know, they have a license that they got when they were doing this other thing, but now they're doing decorating and they keep the license for referral purposes. There's a percentage of those licensees that are not directly selling, just like for every 1,000 registered nurses, 250 of them do not do bedside care.
That is a good description. DP, King of the Tennis Court, says, how can realtors think smarter about their overhead costs?
I think you have to really go back to the consumer. As when we are self-employed, especially if you're new to it, you move to having one of the worst bosses in the world because they believe all your excuses and they love all the same things you do, and it's really easy to enter into some agreement. You know, everybody's marketing realtors and self-employed folks all the time. Here, I'll do your marketing for you. Here, I've got this great plan. Let me take this off your hand for just $500 a month. The list goes on and on and on. I've almost completely stopped answering numbers that I don't recognize because half the time they're trying to market me something.
Really?
Or sell me something.
Who's doing that?
Everybody. There's no one thing. Everybody. And so the minute you're self-employed, it's sort of public, and when you're a realtor, it's very public. You get on lists and you're just marketed to death. So I think the first thing I would tell them is to remember that it's about the consumer first. So resist the idea of purchasing something that makes you feel good unless it also adds value to your relationship with the consumer or otherwise connects you to them. That relationship and that value add is the most important thing because people are getting pressed on all sides. And so what can we do, whether it is knowing to offer a complimentary rent back that costs the seller nothing but time, or the purchaser nothing but time, there's ways that we can add value to their process.
Well, the purchaser's going to need to find a place to live as well.
We talked about why that was, though, on the show. You know,
Yeah.
if they have an extended lease and
Yeah.
we're planning in advance, and
Yeah.
you know, so I think we have to remember to do that and do our best to be organized in how we present things. What are the costs that we can control, and control them, and for the things that we must spend money on, let's be sure it's really focused on our consumer because real estate is not about the brokerage and it's not about the realtor, it's about the consumer.
This is an interesting text I just received from Kelsey. Kelsey, love when you watch the program. Does QB, I love the QB. Does QB think it's going to be more about brand with agents that get share?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite
Does,
catch that.
does QB think it's going to be more about brand with the agents that end up with the share? She means market share. And I would imagine she's alluding to, and I'll text her back here, are you alluding to individual brand with the agents? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it still goes back to your relationship with the consumer. Some of those brands are better suited to support that than others, but it's also a very unique market. I'm trying to think of the last time we were in a market of this style, and there's nothing that I can compare it to when I'm thinking of being a real estate agent and what do I want my agents to do well so that they provide lots of value to their clients that bring those clients back to them.
Nice. Good answer right there. All right, let's get to as many comments as possible here. God, an hour flies by with this guy here. This is about employers. State Farm leaves. Jobs seem to be going from the market. State Farm averaged 3,500 to 4,000 team members. They're not in the market anymore. Are you concerned at all about jobs for middle America, middle class in this community evaporating? We know, and I hate to say this, but we know the Zoom work from home ISP jobs are not generally middle, lower income gigs.
I don't know that I'm concerned about jobs specifically. We're seeing good jobs reports in terms of unemployment going down, more jobs being created. What I'm concerned about is how that interrelates in totality with where people live and what cost do they subsume. So there's a term that you'll hear for brittle poverty, and I think of it in terms of brittle homelessness. If I have let's suppose I have a really good job at some sort of large, well-funded institution. I don't know, UVA. So let's suppose I work for UVA. I make a solid $45,000 a year. I have good benefits and health insurance, and I am the sole supporter of my family. But because of the price increase, I am getting pushed further and further away, and my cost of transportation means I have less and less disposable income. Now I am one health issue, one child with a broken arm, one car breakdown from not being able to make rent. And so I'm concerned. I think that the jobs that are in that circumstances are increasing, and we would all rather have people be employed than unemployed. And the latest jobs report that you and I were talking about that was so good that nobody expected saw increases across all categories. And so that's a real positive. I think the piece that we can affect and we should affect is what does the patchwork of housing options look like? And I think Neil would agree with me, we need more doors in all places of all styles.
Yeah, he would agree with that.
I need more rental doors, I need more multifamily, more high density, just more, and I want it faster. And I don't want it just for me, I want it because there's too many people trying to get in the pool. and we need to have more space.
Yeah, he would definitely agree with that.
If I am the $45,000 person and I get to live closer to where I have to work and have to show up, as we're referencing work from home stuff versus who doesn't work from home, that reduces my risk because all my costs go down when I live in close proximity. It has some other more inherent effects, like me getting to live in a place where I have 2 more hours a day to spend with my family and my children because I'm not spending that time in the car. I am not so far from their school that every time I need to show up for an appointment with their teacher, it's half a day off from work. That chews into my vacation time and my PTO. There's 1,000 intrinsic benefits for that. And frequently when businesses participate in positive ways in their community, they're participating in their local community. And so we want our employees, I want my employees to be able to live in the areas we serve, because those are most often the areas we also support philanthropically, and I want them to be able to stay there.
Check out the comments. You see the comments blowing up over here. Look at Roger's comment over there. I'm going to relay to you D-Mac's comment, Daniel's comment. Our area is unique in that we have a disproportionate number of realtors that work part-time when in fact they do not need to work. They just enjoy what they do. A lot of these realtors are actually very good at what they do, and in fact may have moved here from other areas to partially retire. It still factors in the sales per agent numbers that we see. He's right about that. Good comment right there from Daniel McDougall. Questions for Quentin Beckham continue to jump on the feed here. Does he expect more inventory to uptick in the next month or so for those that are looking?
Do I expect us to have more houses come on the market? Yes. It's spring. This is when we have houses coming on the market. Or at least it's pretending to be spring in spite of everything that you're going to see happen to weather tomorrow in the area. But these are the times where people move because they have to. So you're going to have more opportunities. I don't know that it's going to significantly impact the ratio, because it's about the ratio. The number of homes for sale versus the number of purchasers is, I don't see that having a dramatic correction. And let's suppose it does correct. If a healthy market is 6 months of inventory, the last time I looked we're at 0.9 months. So let's suppose there is a big burst and we get up to 2 months. That's still where we were 18 months ago, 19 months ago, 20 months ago. So we're back to how deep is the pool. And everything through the pandemic, and I'm concerned about what's going to happen economically, keeps raising that water.
Well said. What's the guidance from Keller Williams' parent?
Ask a better question, more specific.
What's the guidance or the conversations or the advice that's being passed along from KWA at the top level, executive level?
I think what we're seeing is we.
So that's a macro question.
If I were a consultant to somebody that was going to start a real estate business, they've got a lot of capital. I'm going to open a brokerage and start a real estate business. And what do you think I need? And at the risk of being wrong, I'm not the only opinion out there, and I'm not the smartest opinion out there. I would tell you, one, you need a lot of technology, because the geographical footprint of a successful brokerage and real estate agent is 2 to 5 times the size it was before. And so you have to be able to get a lot of aggregate data to put in front of your buyers because of the scarcity and sparse nature of the home landscape. The other thing I would tell you is that being self-employed is complicated without a strong support structure, because very few of us can do everything well. And so if you think about the individual realtor, there's a handful of them that can do the whole 9 yards in terms of P&Ls, marketing, sales, relationship management, technology development, technology management, contracting, negotiating, risk management. I could go on and on and on. And so you want to have good partnerships and good support services so that agents that are really good agents that are excellent with their clients are not spending 4 hours a day trying to balance a budget, do a P&L, and it's June and they still haven't filed their taxes. So So you need a good support structure. And then the third thing I would say is to create space for people that are good yins and yangs to partner. You're seeing a lot of teams across the real estate
The
landscape.
question just came in. We see a lot more co-listings with overhead much higher now.
I don't know that it's because of the overhead, but yes, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And at no point when you're looking at what do you cut something that is important to the consumer and that really serves the consumer. And so often you have to just really keep that focus, and it feels very personal to me because at the same time I'm trying to do that across our businesses and with our agents. It's really what I'm asking City Council and Board of Supervisors to do as well, is to keep that focus. It's so easy to get distracted by the shiny object in a fast-changing, volatile economy, to think this is the silver bullet. This is the thing that's going to address the need. This is the thing that's going to make me popular with all of my consumers. And it's really a lot more pedestrian than that, and it's really a lot more basic than that. It's just work. It's work, and it requires forethought.
Well said. Very well said. Dude, you're on point today. Anything you want to cover that we haven't covered?
Gosh, what have we not covered?
We covered a
I was
lot.
trying to think of what we haven't covered.
Right? Isn't it fun?
It's really interesting, especially when people chime in.
Yeah, because you never know where it's going to go.
I never know where it's going to go, which also sort of makes me anxious.
Right?
And
Especially considering the people chiming in are pros and experts.
They are really, yes. And I get concerned about how many things I say that they're like, he's wrong.
I don't think
When I was in
they
health-
would tell you.
When I was in healthcare, I used to watch all the emergency room shows, and I was just like, that never happens, or that's not how you do it. And I never got to have sex in an empty room. I don't know what they're talking about. It's just, besides which.
Was
sex
that
in-
a Grey's Anatomy or ER reference?
Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
Emergency rooms are gross. You should not be trying to do intimate things in there. It's disgusting. You're asking for trouble.
That's a first right here on Real Talk right there. I thought you covered a lot. I love the feed, and I love you viewers and listeners and how knowledgeable you are. A lot of times we come in here and say, bring it to us and we'll adapt to you. And it's a vulnerable feeling. And to be able to adapt, you have to be experienced and well-read and connected and talk to a lot of people. And I think you embody those qualities. How about a word of either caution or hope or some advice that's analytical on what we can expect soon?
I think you're going to continue to just see things get more expensive. So, before you're behind the eight ball, if you're on a smaller budget, and even if you're on a larger one, take a look at that. Take a look at what can I do now. What we saw during the pandemic was we had a lot of cash flow in. It changed the way we purchased things, and it made things available to us that we might not have had an opportunity to have before. And so we did it. We spent that money because we were losing our minds sitting at home. And I think we're moving into an economic space where you might want to do a little bit of the opposite of that.
Squirreling some away?
Squirrel a little bit away especially if you're really tight paycheck to paycheck. Squirrel some away, because the price of things tomorrow that you must have can be dramatically different. Groceries, gas, that sort of thing.
Bravo.
And if you do have disposable income, if you are fortunate enough to be at the upper part of that, try to remember that your ability to maybe put away half and spend half really does help support the local economy. A lot of the people that need help are serving your meals, washing your cars, and doing things that they really hope you keep doing, because although it's not perfect, it is their source of income. And so if you have an opportunity to do that, and brace yourself to help the food banks, because they're probably going to need us in the summer months and in the time to come.
DP says, keep reading Anne Lamott Quinton.
I love Anne Lamott. One of her quotes that I keep using over and over is, we've been talking about taxes and schools and things in the local level, and everybody's trying to find this perfect path forward. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's involved in this stuff, and I kept coming to mind that perfection is the voice of the oppressor. It will keep you crazy and boxed in your whole life. And I do think as we move forward, there's things City Council I may or may not agree with. board of supervisors I may or may not agree with. But fortunately, I've had the good fortune over the last couple of years to meet the vast majority of these people, and they really, truly
Want what's best.
they want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
It's a complicated path forward, and I hope that we release them from the need to be perfect so that they can have progress and we can live in this really imperfect space that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in right now, with all the volatility out there. Dude, you were on point. Absolutely on point. This week in change has been enjoyable.
I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sorry I missed Greg's show. I'm going to have to try and look it up.
It was solid. Quentin Beckham, guys, QB. We call him the quarterback. That might be the new moniker, the quarterback.
I've been called worse things.
The quarterback's a good moniker.
Yeah. I've been called worse things in football locker rooms, but
Certainly the quarterback of his team. Judah Wickower is our director. My name is Jerry Miller, and this is Real Talk presented by Keller Williams Alliance and Yes Realty Partners on a gorgeous Friday in the Commonwealth, guys. The I Love Seville show. Wow, it's 11:26. The I Love Seville show will be up in an hour and change with Lee Elberson, a friend of everyone's here, the CEO of Claiborne Education, guys. Join us, and have a good morning. Take care. Quentin, bravo.
I do love me some Lee.
Yeah, Lee's great, man.
Lee's awesome.
Dude, went in there